Cheers. Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harrison. I read, review and discuss fantasy and science fiction books. Today, in honour of St. Patrick's Day and one of my favourite beers, Guinness, I am going to be running through a beer book tag. This is going to be a recommendation of books that the title spells out the name of one of my favourite beers, Guinness. I'm also going to be drinking this Guinness as we film the video, and I may have already messed up this intro a few times, hence the difference in height between the top of the glass. However, we're going to roll straight into my list of books. If you're another booktuber and you like drinking beer and you would like to do a beer book tag of your own, please do tag me in your videos so that I can share them on the channel. And let's get straight into things. So, beer book tag, Guinness. First letter is G. And for G, we're going to be going with Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. This is the second book in the Red Rising series, which is a first-person POV science fiction series. It's almost fantasy-ish because there's a lot of like sword fighting, but there's no like magic or anything like that. It does have things like great houses, so it takes a lot of inspiration from Dune, I would say, whilst simplifying it. The word dumbing down is wrong, but it's kind of dumbing it down, making it super simple, super digestible, super fun, action-packed, really great reading. We're not going heavy and deep on philosophy here in Red Rising. And in Golden Sun, which is the second book in the series, it's kind of a Empire Strikes Back situation, where it's the best book in the original trilogy. I actually DNF'd this book in 2017, but then reread it this year and had a much better experience. I think it's a really good book. I would recommend the Red Rising series pretty much wholeheartedly. So yeah, I mean, one thing I will say, there are trigger warnings for that first book, so make sure that you look those up if you are susceptible to that sort of thing. Please, look out for yourself, check out the trigger warnings for Red Rising, and if none of those things bother you, then carry on and read the series. I would recommend it. It's good fun sci-fi. Next up, the U in Guinness, I've gone for Unsold, which is the first book in the Cradle series. So it's sold not like SOLD, it's sold like SOUL. So Unsold is the first book in the Cradle series. I went into Cradle knowing almost nothing about it, apart from that it was about leveling up. Like, that was what people told me. They were like, this whole book is like leveling up. And it starts off in this kind of martial arts based society where people like rank up through being like able to use like almost like chi style powers, like internal energy. And we kind of start with the main character who can't use these powers. And we follow him as he kind of learns to do something kind of on his own that is outside of the traditional leveling system. And then about halfway through the book, the whole thing, like, there's a huge table flip, the whole thing's turned on its head. And I was absolutely gripped from there. I thought that the shift in style at that point in the book was fantastic. The rest of the book is really, really good. I DNF'd the second book in the series because it was an incredibly slow start and it wasn't really what I was looking for after finishing the first book. But I do think I'll get back to it someday. Mostly I just kind of was like a bit bored of the first couple of chapters and it was really hard to get back into it. However, really enjoyed that first book. I hear from people that it gets really good as it goes later on. I do also hear that from a few people that it doesn't end well, which is a shame, because, you don't want to read 12 books and then it turns out that it's not the best. But I did really enjoy that first book and I would recommend it. Next one is I. So for this one, I have picked a book from I read when I was a teenager. So when I was first getting into reading adult fantasy, the first adult fantasy book that I read that was like a big chunky fantasy book, as we think of them today, was Magician by Raymond D. Feist. And I read a few of those books. I read like the first 3 sub-series of books. So I read all of the Magician books and the Rift War, and then I read the Krondor Chronicles, and I I lost I lost the thread of those books around the Demon War cycle, I believe. I still really liked all of them, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. I'm here to talk about The Innocent Mage, which is one part of a duology by Karen Miller. It is about a character who is recruited to be kind of the court wizard, as it were, in and he's like, I think he's like a fisherman, and he has like absolutely no idea that he's just incredibly magically powerful. And the first book is about kind of learning to be a wizard, learning how to use magic and all that sort of stuff. And then the second book in the duology, he's like extremely overpowered, saving the country. Yeah, I really, really, really loved this series when I was a kid, and I actually rebought them from Vinted very recently. I bought both books for like £1, as just like secondhand reading copies that I am planning on rereading. I don't know when I'll get to those, because I do prefer to prioritize new experiences over rereading old ones, but these in particular, as you can probably tell, my memory is kind of foggy on, so it would almost be a new experience. It's been probably close to 20 years since I read them, so yeah, I expect I could probably read those now without remembering all that much. So yeah, hoping to read these sometime this year. If you have read either of these and you think I should make them a super priority, then let me know. And also, not many duologies in fantasy, so I'm kind of genuinely excited to get to read them. Book 4, the N in Guinness, I have picked, and I actually had quite a few books to pick from here. But I have decided to pick Never Die by Rob J. Hayes. So I've reviewed this one on the channel, as I have Golden Sun as well, actually. So I've reviewed Never Die on the channel. It's one of my earlier videos, so, you know, be prepared for some fantastic sound quality and video. However, Never Die is a really cool fantasy that is set in a kind of wuxia, martial arts fairy tale style inspired world. I had a lot of fun reading this one. If you, like me, are into like martial arts stories and like wuxia as well, then I would absolutely recommend seeking this one out. It's a short read, it's self-published, it's on Kindle Unlimited. Rob J. Hayes is a really lovely bloke, and yeah, so many really fun characters in this book. And I did actually guess the twist. I would say twist is a wrong term. I guessed a big pivotal reveal fairly early on, but still absolutely really enjoyed this book, and would totally recommend it. So next up, the next N is Network Effect by Martha Wells, which is the 5th book in the Murderbot Diaries series. Network Effect is actually the only, it's the only one that I have read of these books that is a full-length novel. Murderbot is essentially about a synthetic human who calls themselves Murderbot. And they were originally designed to be a security droid, and then they kind of go rogue and kind of fake pretend to be an enhanced human instead of an artificial human. And the series is kind of all about all the misadventures they get up to. But there's kind of like a background story of like what happened to them originally, where do they come from. And Network Effect, as I say, is the first full-length novel in the series. I would say that this is probably the best book in that series, and it's because it kind of diverges from the formula of Murderbot. So this was actually the last Murderbot that I read, and I did DNF the series from there. I don't think I will be going back, but this was quite a good high point to end on because I really enjoyed it. So if you're in for more of a kind of I don't want to say cozy sci-fi, but a kind of simpler and more, I I guess cozy is probably the right term. It's quite a cozy story, I guess. I mean, there's like action and stuff like that, but the character of Murderbot, I know a lot of people really relate to and empathize with, so it could be quite a cozy read for you. Next up, we have E, and there are a lot of books that I could have recommended here. There are a lot of really good books that I have read that begin with E. There's also a book that I recently DNF'd that begins with an E, but I'm going to go with Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. What a surprise. We've talked a little bit on this channel and also on Matt's channel over at Bask in the Story about how I am kind of Wheel of Time pilled right now. I am thinking about Wheel of Time all the time. I am sitting, like, earlier today, I remembered a joke from Dragon Reborn and just sat chuckling to myself on the sofa. I'm in. I am Wheel of Time pilled. And Eye of the World is a book that I was expecting, right? So I was expecting it to be like a 2 to 3 star read. I was expecting it to be a slog. I was expecting it to be a little amateurish because it was one of Jordan's first big novels. I was expecting it to be to feel very derivative. Whether it is or is not derivative is, you know, I'd say it's a matter of opinion. I think that it's more of an inspired by Lord of the Rings. It does not feel like a direct takeoff, at least for me. There's obviously a lot of common elements, and Jordan has said himself that you needed to write something that was basically Lord of the Rings back then to get published. But I don't feel like it's brazenly, obviously Lord of the Rings. I feel like it's kind of got its own thing going on. It's got its own storytelling. It's got its own elements. It's got really strong characters. The world is much darker and more interesting, in my opinion. So yeah, Eye of the World is a book that I have absolutely loved. I've got so much time for it. If you haven't read The Wheel of Time, I'll be surprised because I feel like I'm the only one who hasn't. I'm the last one left. Especially Eye of the World. Most people have given that one a chance. But if you haven't given Eye of the World a chance, it's a genuinely great book, and I was shocked because, again, I said I was expecting like a 2 to 3 star experience that I was going to suffer through to get to the good books when it starts to get good at like book 3, book 4, etc. But no, I absolutely loved it. Gave it 4 stars. So this is a long-winded way of me saying, again, I'm Wheel of Time pilled, and The Eye of the World is a great book. S. So in the penultimate book, Guinness is doing its job. And we're going to talk about what is possibly, depending on the day you ask, my favourite Brandon Sanderson book, which is Shadows of Self, which is the second book in Era 2 of Mistborn. So Shadows of Self is where I fully fell in love with Wax and Wayne, and I think especially Wax. I think Shadows of Self gives so much more depth to him as a character. Shadows of Self also takes the kind of one-off fun storytelling of Alloy of Law, and I would say grounds it into a kind of a darker, more real world that we've kind of been used to from Scadrial stories in the Mistborn series. It also links us back up with some characters from the original Mistborn trilogy that are still kind of knocking around for various reasons. It also shows us one of the characters, or kind of gives us a different view on one of the characters from that original trilogy. Brings a lot more depth to the world. It really fleshes out Marassi as a character, and I really grew to like her over the series. I feel like it really fleshes her out and kind of takes her from that like mooning fangirl to more of a whole character. And yeah, I think Shadows of Self is a fantastic book. I know a lot of people who are not huge fans of Wax and Wayne, and all I have to say to those people is I don't understand. This series is excellent. It's like magic steampunk. I love that Sanderson has allowed his worlds to move on from that medieval fantasy. You often get like a fantasy book, and then they'll do a sequel series that's set 100 years later, and everyone will still be fighting with swords and riding horses. Whereas in Wax and Wane, in Era 2 of Mistborn, we're almost in like a Legend of Korra situation where they're on the cusp of the Industrial Revolution. So they have trains, they are starting to have cars instead of horse and carriage. And they're building the very first skyscraper in this town, which is just, it's such a cool idea to kind of spend time in a world on that cusp of that technological growth. Really, really loved it. Wished, honestly, we'd had more of Era 2 books. When I finished The Lost Metal, which is not the book that I'm recommending here, but I also did like. When I finished The Lost Metal, I kind of was like, oh, I really wish we just had more of these characters. And because it's the Cosmere, I am kind of expecting us to see more of those characters. But for now, all I'll tell you is that Shadows of Self is probably my favourite Sanderson book and is definitely the best Mistborn book. Oh, actually, no, it is. Final Empire is truly excellent, and I owe it a lot for getting me back into books and reading. The kind of Ocean's 11 style storytelling in that fantasy world. But I think Shadows of Self is truly my favourite. Finally, we're coming to what I think may be, if not the best, definitely one of the best Dresden Files books. As you guys know, the Dresden Files is one of my top series of all time, written by Jim Butcher. This book is Skin Game. This is book 15 in the Dresden Files, but don't worry, all of these books are under 400 pages. You can blast through them. They're really quick, really easy reads, short chapters, and all of them are just super fun. I never expected when I started reading the series to want to reread them, so I picked them all up on Kindle. But by the time I got to the end, I was like, I'm probably going to reread these every few years. Like, give it a decade and I'll be working my way back through these Dresden books. But Skin Game. So let me give you the plot, right? Harry Dresden is Chicago's wizard for hire. So he's in the phone book. He finds lost objects. He gets rid of curses. And he's fully open. He's like, I'm a wizard. Magic exists. And people kind of don't believe him. But Harry Dresden owes a favour to the Queen of Air and Darkness, to Mab. She's the Winter Queen. She runs the winter half of the Fae Court. And Harry owes her a favour. And she's like, right, I need you to go and help out this person. And this other person happens to be Harry's biggest nemesis, his greatest enemy. And he has to help this enemy. And I don't want to say who it is, because that might kind of spoil it for you guys. If you're early in the series, you might know that this person survives the encounter that they have early on. But anyway, Harry's nemesis, I would say, Harry is forced to help his nemesis break into hell to steal the Holy Grail from the devil. How can you make a cooler, funner story than that? I had so much fun reading this book. I read it in like a day, I think. Like, I loved it so much. I recommended the Dresden Files by pitching people with this book multiple times. So yeah, it's just a great book. It's a great story. It's so fun. It's got that Ocean's 11 style heist movie aspect to it, which I feel like I'm learning is one of the things that I love in fantasy books. So yeah, a massive recommendation from me, as is the entire Dresden Files series. So that's it. That is my Guinness book tag, or the beer book tag is probably what we'll call it. I have really enjoyed recording this video and drinking this Guinness. And I hope that at least one or two people take on this tag and it starts to spread, because I've never actually had an idea to create a tag before. And maybe there's already a beer book tag, but I'm not going to Google it or search for it. So I only have so much time to make these fun videos. So thank you so much for watching. If you're going to make a beer book tag, which I would absolutely love, please do tag me in the comments or the thingamajig description. I will watch every single one. I'm looking forward to seeing what your favourite beers and books are, and maybe adding some more stuff to my TBR. If you've liked this video, give it a like. If you've watched this video all the way to the end, type cheers in the comments, maybe put that beer emoji in, that'd be fun. And please do subscribe to the channel. Every subscription helps tell me that I'm doing some good stuff. Have a lovely St. Patrick's Day. This is going to go up on the day, on Sunday, which is not my normal upload day, so this is an extra video for everyone. And I hope you guys have had a great weekend, a great St. Patrick's Day. Don't drink too much, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Goodbye. Sláinte.